Okay, so here's the days. So yesterday we talked about the science of revenue growth. That it is revenue operations is not alignment. You don't define something by its end goal. It is about science. Then we went over the business model. So how do we, as in a like the fundamental level, what is our business model, and what does that say about our business, and how does that affect how we're thinking about our average deal size and our sales cycle, and how we're just going to structure our team. So today in day two, as we think about day two, is we're going over go-to-market model, data model, growth model, math model, and tool stack. I'm going to be very clear about this. This is heavy. If you have ever seen Winning by Design, this is almost verbatim Winning by Design, the revenue architecture. It is the best thing I have read over. I read every revenue guide. I watched every YouTube video, and there is nothing better that's actual science that allows us to think strategically. And so in many ways, I'm reusing how they're operating and giving us a format so then we can then place inside of HubSpot. So just know this is heavy, and I'll go over it and call it out where it is. So here's our summary. And before I go, I want to make a reminder is I talked about this earlier, becoming a HubSpot admin. If you haven't watched that video, I highly recommend. It fits nicely within this, which is how to think about and communicate strategically. We are very as a core level, we are not teaching like the initiative or apprentice. We're not teaching stage 2, level 2 task here. We are clearly in the adept and master where we are learning go-to-market, forecasting, TAM, persona, messaging, and how to communicate. And so this is a core function of being able to talk and strategic and start influencing initiatives and spend for your tool stack, and having a moving to that director of RevOps or director of sales or director of marketing role inside your organization. What we're also going to start covering is how do you translate this go-to-market into your HubSpot instance. So we'll probably be more of an apprentice level, but it's like the foundations, like how you translate this at the first level. So if you're new to HubSpot or revenue operations, it's still a really good path for that. Okay. So this is day one learning, just a quick review, and then I'm going to answer the questions and that you're putting into chat so that I can see them. So class one, we said the definition of revenue operations, for the most part, if you go online, is gobbledygook. It is a regurgitated content writers that are thinking about revenue operations, and they're defining something by their end goal as in that's something. That revenue operations is not new. People have been doing it for decades, perhaps even centuries. Just the importance and the difficulty of doing it has increased. And thus there is now a profession of people who specialize in the science. And that's what revenue operations is. It's the science of revenue growth. It's most related to sabermetrics, which is the science or an empirical analysis of baseball. And it's used as an analogy, and it's just the best. The empirical analysis of baseball always existed, but it became as important as the tools we had got better, and the data we were able to collect got better, how we can synthesize the data got better, and how we disseminate got better. Same is exactly true with revenue operations, and thus a profession, and why we're all here to learn about it. We talked about the reason for the rise. These are quickly that we now have broadband internet access that's transformed our lives. They're talking about transform our lives, change the buyer's journey, increase the amount of data that we both have, and making it more difficult. We have to be data native. Businesses have become more complicated, and we moved to subscription models because the internet has allowed us to move to subscription models, and it has complicated our business. We now must not focus just on the left side of the funnel, but the right side of the funnel, which is the customer journey part. And then SaaS, as we mentioned, people need individuals that have budget to sell to. And so there's now this new profession of RevOps. And so you have SaaS that has made this term more popular because they need it to be popular because that's what they're selling to. We then went over RevOps methodologies. We talked about the pillar issue, where there's a lot of pillars everywhere. There's 3 pillars, 4 pillars, 5 pillars, and 6 pillars, and it doesn't mean a whole lot. And that we started putting it into a revenue engine framework that is built on this Winning by Design framework, and then adding it and saying, here's how you do revenue engine inside HubSpot. Class 2, we started the B2B business model. The premise being we're vertical agnostic. Rather, it's about the journey to reoccurring revenue, whether you are in the ownership model, subscription model, all the way to a consumption model. And that based on that model, you have effects in your business that have profound effects. That it will change how you do your sales cycle and your average contract value, your win ratio, your risk profile, how quickly you can become profitable as a business. and how much value you're giving the seller. If you're assuming more risk, you are more valuable to the buyer, and that it affects how you go to market, which is the cliffhanger, which we're going to start talking about today. Okay, so with that, before I start, I'm going to go over questions that we had yesterday. And so Jan, I'm going to make sure you said that they're in chat and that only I can see them from you.
Yeah, I sent them as a direct message. If you scroll up a little bit.
Okay, I'm making it really big because there's a lot of messages in here. So 1 second, I'm sorry. Okay, so here, question. Would you say HubSpot's focus, so this is the question that I'm going to answer them. Would you say HubSpot's focus is consumption, as the way you increase recurring revenue is by increasing profits of current clients by upselling? So this is talking about, if you remember that the SaaS, we're talking about that the speedometer, if you would. HubSpot is not a consumption model. They're a subscription closer to the paying monthly. Sometimes you even pay quarterly, and they're trying to go to annual subscriptions, right? Because they want cash. What is consumption is how they track marketing contacts and how many seats, because they recalculate and they'll prorate. So it's this combination of both. You'll see a lot of companies, as they become more sophisticated, they're combining this consumption type model so they can charge you more and they can constantly upsell and upgrade your contract through proration. And so that's where HubSpot sits. My sales cycle are based on the persistence of students to graduate towards degrees. Would you align it to subscription? Honestly, I'd need more information there, my sales cycles. But my assumption is people are only paying if they get a degree. And at the end of that, then they pay in full. And so that is a consumption model where you are it's a type of consumption model where you are bearing all the risk and you are only getting the benefit as someone finishes. And so part of like thinking about this is who is bearing the risk. If I sell a hardware product only with no contract for service, am I a perpetual ownership business model? Yes. Yes, you are. How can one transition themselves from sales op to RevOps? I'm going to answer that question with going back to this. I'm going to say is one of the things that talk about the number of functions, revenue operations is, again, it is a field of study. Within that field of study, there are almost like biology. Inside biology, there is specializations inside those. Like you need to know organic chemistry, for example. One of sales ops is a field of study within revenue operations that is specifically studying, which we'll go over this today in the data model, your sales cycle. From your SQL all the way to your contract signed, and like understanding how to optimize and how to make that most efficient. Marketing ops is to the left of that, and CS ops is to the right of that. We'll go over that more. So how do you transition? Is honestly the best way to transition is getting into a role, and it's going to be learning the data model that we're going to cover today. You need to be able to speak the data model. That's how you're able to transition to revenue operations, because you can speak all conversions, all metrics, and all time, and be able to translate that into a go-to-market. So it's what I'm going to show you today. That's how you transition. Okay, those are the questions that we had from yesterday. I'm going to continue and go on for this. So here's the agenda for today. There's a lot more than that. This seems like 4 things, but there's a lot to cover all today for our class. Number 1 is, what is the go-to-market? What does that mean? What do we define it as? Because honestly, just like revenue operations, this can mean lots of things to different people. How does my go-to-market motion affect my org structure? So we'll talk about how sales, marketing, and CS teams have different org structures based on who you're selling your products to and how they are buying them. What are the common go-to-market mistakes? We'll talk about that using the growth model, about what happens to companies when they attempt to do more than one go-to-market motion preemptive too early. Then what is data model and how does it interplay with the go-to-market? We'll talk about all 4 of these things today. I'm pumped about this. This is gonna be fun. So what is the go-to-market model? So I call it like this revenue engine framework. Again, this is built on almost, if you go look at the revenue architecture for by design, it's built on this. So you have a business model, and that's what we talked about, just to give us a frame of reference where we're at. We talked about the business model and all these interplay, and we'll have your exercise at the end of the day today. We'll be putting all these together. So you have a business model. What we're talking about today is on top of that business model, you have a sales go-to-market motion, a marketing go-to-market motion, and a customer success go-to-market motion. On top of that, you need to understand where you are in your growth model, because you may, just to make a point, do you truly have your go-to-market fit before you start scaling up? What is your data model they're going to effectuate, and how you're actually using this to drive, start prioritizing and create, like, here's efficiency and here's where I'm going. On top of that, you then have the math model, which we'll talk about later today. We'll have the tech stack that's going to enable all of this to work, which we'll talk about at the end of today as well. And then at the top of this, which we'll start talking about on day 5 or day 3 on class 5, is RevOps fundamentals. That's great. Now, how do I put this into configure this in a way where I can start actually using the data model to say whether I'm being successful in hitting my targets? How do I do the measurements? How do I effectuate that? So that's where we're going. This is what we're about to talk about now. I'm so excited. This is gonna be fun. Okay. What is go-to-market? Before I go into this, let's ask, this will be a question to the crowd. You can raise your hand. Jan will pick the fastest hand raiser there is. And I want you to ask, what do you think go-to-market means? Jan, can you pick someone raising their hand?
There aren't any takers.
Oh my goodness, no takers.
Oh, I see some people. Maybe there was a
got
delay in the system. Okay.
Okay.
Let's talk to Joel.
Joel.
Hey,
what is go-to-market? What does a go-to-market motion mean to you?
What I'm thinking, I mean, I'm just, taking a wild shot at it, but what I'm thinking is that go-to-market for me, would really be, understanding the nature, or the entire dynamics of the market that you're intending to target. So basically having a precise strategy for the precise market. So understanding, what are their needs in that market. So, depending on what segment you're targeting. Does that make sense?
Yes, and you're right. So I'd say everybody a hand clap for Joel, if you can, in the chat. That is, all of those are right. So this is what makes go-to-market so darn difficult. That's people get degrees to create go-to-markets, right? Like it's called business school. People go to school, and if you actually look at that, becoming a HubSpot admin, one of them is like, how do you get better at this? Go get your MBA. Like it's called. But I'm gonna be like, let's put this down so we can make this. And how do we, as revenue professionals, how do we interact with this go-to-market strategy in a way that we are translating into business objectives and business terms that are helping us? So we say this is it is a plan on how your organization. We're going to break up into 2 parts. Part 1 is the motion. So it's how do you engage with your end customers to convince them to buy your products and to gain a competitive advantage. So this is what we're going to focus on, this motion part. So this is, how does your sales team interacting? How's your marketing team interacting? How's your CS team interacting? But there's another point that's extremely important. And this is what, when somebody writes a go-to-market plan, if you haven't written one, like there's entire text, right, that put this, you have to include the price. How do you price? What are sales? What are channels? What's the buyer journey? What's the new product? What's the service landscape? How are you going to do product rebranding? How do you do product introduction? So just know there's the tactical part. We are not talking about that today, and they are very important. What we're going to be talking about are the motions, and understanding how all those motions interplay with each other to then start creating a framework where we can put this into a CRM and configure it and understand, are we on track? Or are we behind? That's what we're talking about today. These tactics are many times these tactics, how your motions are set up, your tactics, you're going to make people are going to make hypotheses about what the tactics are, but your motions and what we talk about today will tell you Are your tactics working? And that's what we miss when we usually have, when we build our CRMs. We do not, that's what revenue operations, it's the science that allows us to measure, allows us to explain and teach and change and pivot. This is what we're setting up and we're talking about today. We're not going to tactics because I would consider those some of the fundamentals of RevOps. So just example. And so you've probably seen, if you've taken HubSpot lessons, there's lessons on how to create ICPs or ideal customer profiles, how to create personas, how do you do competitive analysis, how do you create your messaging, how do you create your pricing? All these are core tactics that you need to understand, but are not actually, you don't have to have these in order to talk about what we're talking about today. So I think it's important to break them up. So you'll see this is what we're going to focus on. Okay. I've said this last time, I'll say it again. Jocko, I don't know how to say this, is the godfather of RevOps, and he doesn't even know it. So he helped build this and the thought. So what we're going to do today, I'm actually going to use, there's a lot of different sales motions. I'm going to start with sales motions because it's the ones that I think it's very helpful to see these. And so we're going to go from left to right. So the first sales motion that I'm going to go over is product-led growth. And we've talked about this. This is called customer acts as marketing and sales. This is when you don't need, like your marketing and sales teams many times are your products, and they are your end and pro users are word of mouth and creating, and it is a very specific sales motion. You then go to inside sales. And so inside sales means, I mean, if you take the term as it was first created, not what it was says, is inside sales it's a full cycle rep that can take an inbound call from the first call all the way to the end, usually ending with like a sign up page and the transaction's done, not through a quote or something, but something that's it's a very low touch. There's not many stages, not many meetings in between that you go through. We call it, and I'll talk about what we're going to rename it here in a second. The next is, and you've probably heard of this, is the MDR, the BD, this like SDR to AE. Meaning there's somebody doing, and so this is most traditionally aligned with an outbound motion, where an SDR is like outbound calling or outbound creating, like getting people interested, setting meetings, doing a discovery call, and then the AE then is transitioned where they're doing the demo and closing the deal from the beginning to the end. And these are often have quotes and have proposals that must be made, and the deals begin to get more complicated. As you go one step further, this is field sales. And field sales is different. This means you start to get vertical alignment. You have a specific amount of accounts you're assigned to, from anywhere from 10 to 100. Usually 10 is more like named accounts, but 10 to 100. And they aren't customers. You haven't worked with them before. And you're solving complicated vertical specific, segment specific, however you're doing it. These are higher contract values. Custom demos. Many times you'll have a solutions engineer with you to help you execute these, and you're doing custom proposals to win them. So they can be aligned with RFPs or et cetera. The last is you have named accounts that you have that are large entities. Think Amazon, Cisco, and it's less about prospecting into an account, and it's more about you knowing all the people. You're flying out to see them, and you're identifying upcoming projects. So there's your large multi-million-dollar deals with those super long 18 months to 9 month sales cycles. So here are the 5 sales go-to-market motions that we're using these. Now, what you may say is your company may be using several of these at the same time. We'll talk about that later. There are different sales motions, and these different sales motions have different structures and different ways that you're selling. They have different proposal types, different CPQ needs, just that they have different RevOps needs, and they have the way people are consuming are different. So I'll answer the channel thing in a second. So just to make this easier, because I think this is much easier when we start looking at how we're doing a data model for these, is let's call this 1 stage and 2 stage. So meaning the inside sales reps, essentially it's a 1 stage. You have a full cycle AE, and 2 stage means you have an SDR component, and then you have an AE. That's most helpful, and this is the most helpful way to think about these as you go. Now, channel and partners, in my mind, is a is like another go-to-market motion. Totally. So like how channel is done, I would even put it into a sales motion. It is called, I would call it a channel motion. It needs to be thought about separately. We're not going over channel today and how to put that in, but it's a separate motion altogether. In my opinion, that sits on top of these. Usually usually it's sitting at two-stage field sales, like in between here for SMB markets. Okay, so I just want to show you that's like a sales. We're going to go over marketing and CS, but I'm going to show you how those work. And now I'm going to show you is how do these fit? How do we visualize these and have a model that allow us to communicate and translate our business model into a go-to-market model? So what I've done is on the top here is we have each one of the models we talked about. PLG, one stage, two stage, field sales, named accounts. We have a graph. This graph is allowing us to think about the number of deals on the vertical or y-axis, and on the x-axis or horizontal axis, the annual contract value. So we begin to see, hey, what sales go-to-market motion best aligns with the product or the consumption, or not the consumption, but the business model that I'm running. So here's an example. PLG, it sits within, you have hundreds of thousands of individual like sales that are happening on the left to tens of thousands, and you have a very low contract value, maybe $30 a month, which is what, $360 a year. And so you just have to get lots of users. And so it is a separate motion, and how you think about it, supported differently. And all the way to the other side is we have our named accounts. And named accounts, you may have 1 to 5 accounts that you're getting those large projects in. You'll have these projects are $250,000 a year or larger. And you're doing 10 of those, like you're having to close 10 of those, which is $2.5 million. You're bringing in $2.5 million as an AE, instead of having hundreds of thousands of deals you have to close. So if you put these from left to right now, you can see how this all fits. You have your PLG motion, and then you got one stage, two stage, field sales, named accounts. And you can see where they fit and how they go. And what I would like to do now is, Jan, for the poll, is I would like to say, hey, what go-to-market motion are you? You're going to answer this in the exercise anyway. I'm just trying to get our brains like, what sales motion, specifically sales go-to-market motion, are you? I'm going to answer mine now. Oh, panelists can't vote. Okay, let's give it 5 more seconds. Okay, let's close that out and let's see what the results were. Wow. Okay, we have a pretty good mix with the vast majority of companies sitting with the two-stage SDR and AE. I hope all y'all can see this. If you can't, I'm gonna pull it up just so you see on my screen. Is we have of the 172 people that were here, is you have about 13%, another 20% being one stage, majority of individuals being in the two stage, and then you have named accounts and field sales at the bottom. So this is great because most of the examples we're doing, I'm actually doing two-stage examples today. So just as a point. Okay, so that's the sales go-to-market motions, but that's not it. Like, we don't end here. This is the next step, is to think about, okay, how does marketing go-to-market motions fit on top of this? And so traditionally in the old world, I call this old world, you had 2 different go-to-market motions. You had for marketing, you had inbound and you had outbound. And outbound being, direct mail, mass marketing emails. Inbound is the SEO, paid, advanced communities, etc. But today, these have been broken up into 3 new ones. You have inbound, but now the outbound is 3 distinct. And that outbound is a prospecting motion. So that's where like the idea of what we call MDRs, or your marketing development reps, that are doing the outbound instead of the SDRs. And so that's where those names come in. You have ABM, account-based marketing, where there is a totally different approach. that is covering your field sales and attempting to get you into these large accounts to begin to have mind share. And target. These are by name, individual. You're sending people when they have babies, you're sending them, little onesies, like very target-based named accounts where marketing is covering field cover for their sales team as they go and execute their sales go-to-market motion. Now, what I'll do next is like, how do these fit within each one of the stages on what your marketing team's doing? So first is inbound. Inbound actually is done from PL in coordination for the PLG motion all the way to a two-stage motion. And so this is inbound. Like this is HubSpot's bread and butter. They created the word. You could almost say they have defined and created the word inbound. And this is where a lot of the agencies in the HubSpot ecosystem are really stinking good, right? Is doing inbound, creating content, creating thought leadership, doing events, doing campaign attribution, and understanding that. And that's where the majority of marketers today spend most of their time. And just the point is this is also where we have issues, where if you're in a field sales organization and you're doing a field sales go-to-market and you're doing inbound, how helpful is that? It's not that helpful. You actually need a different marketing approach. And so the question becomes, this is talking about alignment, are my sales and marketing team have this like a correct and synchronized go-to-market motion that support each other? Are we giving enough, like the percentage? And this helps us think about it. So next, prospect. Now this is where a lot of people sit in, where marketing gets torn. You're both expected to inbound, getting people to your website, but also help with prospect. And so this here, this is where that sales to marketing alignment happens. This is where marketing teams, we talk about this lead gen versus demand gen. Demand gen, at the most part, happens at inbound and ABM level. But lead gen, where people talk about changing the mindsets. The reality is, yes, we need to change the mindset because there's a better way to do demand gen. However, lead gen of getting the lead list and enriching data and doing email verification and making sure that's here. That is prospecting and giving people that's where sales loft and outreach, that's the bread and butter where people live, that allow you to do direct marketing campaigns and do that. This is where it lives. Next, ABM. ABM sits on top of field sales to help get into large accounts. And you're trying to, because you have to get a mind share of multiple people. It's like 12 people to make a decision. So when someone goes to a website or this is where intent data begins to become very helpful, where tools like Terminus and 6 Sense and Demand Base, where people are using the account-based marketing approaches to just, once somebody starts searching, they're going to just hit you. It's like, wow, I just researched third-party intent data, and now 6 Sense comes up everywhere, even on LinkedIn and Facebook, wherever I'm at, it is there too. That's an account-based marketing approach that tries to just get as much top cover for field sales that then start prioritizing outreach to you because you've shown a surge. Then you have your named account targets. And so this is a very targeted approach, person by person, individual by individual, project by project, that takes extreme personalization to be effective. Okay. So if you want to get anything from this, is no, your sales go-to-market motion and your marketing go-to-market motion must be aligned, or it won't work very well, and you'll have very angry teams. So sometimes at each other, as a point. I'm going to stop for a second. There is a question to ask. Recent data from Gartner Forrester says the majority of buyers are comfortable spending about $50,000 without speaking to a rep, and are more comfortable with inside sales model for larger purchases. Has this impacted your view of the sales go-to-market motion? Yes, it has. And this two-stage point is we are moving to a world where when buyers, we talk about, lost control in a good way, where they are more informed than ever. They are educated buyers and don't want to do a discovery call. They want to go straight to a demo. They want to see the product work, and they have authority to already buy. And so this two-stage model is people are maturing out of it where they don't have SDRs until a bit later, and they're not using SDRs, they're using full cycle AEs, or they're have just a point, and that is maturing out. So there are people like us, RevPartners. Our deals are actually closer to about this, $60,000 to $100,000 range. We don't use two-stage. We do, but we have one-stage full cycle reps, and we have this like mix between one stage and two stage as a point. And so this is happening in the market today. One more. Hi, superstars. What is your annual contract value? Is lower than shown in the graph? Is this a mixed thing like standard? I think you're asking that to everybody. I'll just say is your annual contract value, and then it is going to be indicative of what we're going to talk about this in a moment. Don't worry about how you sell. Worry about how your consumers buy. That's what go-to-market motion you're going to choose. We'll talk about that in a second. Next is customer success, right? So you have to have your CS teams align. And so how you're helping customers changes based on how they're buying. So example. That slide was redundant. I'm so sorry. So next, so you have, here's our CS or customer service go-to-market motions. We have a community, which is, I would consider a self-serve, where, and I'll talk about that in a second. Help desk, I mean, you have tickets and you one for all, it's just prioritized. And then this next portion, volume by segment and by account, is essentially your CS team is broken into smaller and smaller accounts as you have larger and larger average contract deals, right? And so it just changes how you're thinking about it. So let's align these and we see how they all work together. So PLG, community. And so community is, HubSpot in many ways HubSpot is an enterprise business, $1 billion business, and they have every single one of these go-to-market motions today, right? Or probably not accounts they're trying to get there. But if you look at Salesforce, for example, they have every single one of these. So HubSpot has a PLG and they have a community. We're on the community page right now. This is how we learned about this. They have a community forum. They have, if you go and type out how to set up my email with HubSpot, they have a page that has all the answers. It is self-serve, it is a community, or you can ask questions. And for a PLG model, a lot of communities will come up, like the Sprocketeer community for HubSpot, or a Wizard of Ops community for Salesforce. Like these communities will come up and they'll be self-serve. Next is this help desk. That is when someone's sending a ticketing directly in, and then it's automated to a CS team. They don't have named accounts. There's no vertical base. It is just you have a help desk. You're answering questions quickly for your support team. HubSpot has this. If you go to support and you ask a question, you're going to a help desk, and they're getting routed in some way to help you answer. Volume based. This is going to be for. You have a CS team, and there's just going to be just a number of people. They're based on, they'll have some kind of segmentation. So based on number of accounts we have this many CS, and so forth and so on. As you start as you go up, your CS members have less and less accounts that they support. They get to know them more intimately. They may be even doing building or doing implementation for them, or do larger ends. And so these are how the go-to-market model looks. And so if you're having conversations with your executive team, it's so helpful to use a graph like this to be able to say, hey, where are we sitting? And you can just using this circling and putting where you're at can help you say, okay, this is where we're missing. And this is where I think we need to be moving. And can help you think about organization structure and even how your CRM is configured to be able to make sure you're tracking the right things and doing the right actions. Okay. So next, as we think about this is, okay, now I have this model, but that's not it. That's one thing just to think about how sales and marketing and CS are done together. But there's some findings here that I think are important to look at. So here's the first is segmentation. We're going to go over each one of these visually as well. Your segmentation, your go-to-market is mapped not to how you sell. You may sell a completely different way, but what you need to be looking at is how are people buying my products? From the pro users, the SMB, the mid-market enterprise, because how someone is buying dictates the go-to-market motions you should be using, not how you want to go to market necessarily, but how they are buying. You can sell PLG into enterprise customers. Right now at Amazon, there is somebody using Airtable. Airtable is Amazon's not a that took one individual user to spend $15 a month, and that's not an enterprise business. That is a pro user that works at Amazon. So it's just important. How are your people buying? Also, based on your go-to-market, there's different levers of growth. So there's pro and base for if you have a pro user, SMB, or enterprise, there are different levels. We'll go into that more. And then service expectations. We talk about that CS is your go-to-market reflects the service expectations of the customers you have, from all the way to a free service, which is the community boards, right? All the way to a free product and they're paying for service. We'll talk about the expectations and how that changes here in a second. First, let's go. Your buyer process dictates your go-to-market motion. What do I mean? So let's look at this. If you're selling to individual users and they have budget, it's really low. So a lot of times your annual contract value, all this is aligning. But if you're selling to individual users with a low contract value that they can end and start with a freemium, you are selling to pro users. If we are in this two-stage, one stage, you're selling to the SMB mid-market segments, right? And on this side for this ABM and target is an enterprise type sale. Enterprise type sales there can be starts and stops. There are 18-month to 6-month sales cycles. You're talking to 15 to 20 people. You have to talk to this person that has a budget, and now IT wants to validate it to make sure the security is good. It is a totally different buying process. Requires totally different content during the buyer process. Takes different marketing during the marketing, even during the opportunity process. To talk is just totally different because how they are buying is different. They have to get budget approved before they come. Just different. So as a point is look at this. Just remember this. It's just a litmus test. How are the people I'm buying? Look at your best customers where they're most profit. How are those people making decisions? Then orchestrate your go-to-market motions based on how they're making decisions. For emphasis on the bottom there, that's big. Next, let's look at this. How do go-to-market motions have different engines? So I talked about, we have our PLG motion, we have the pro motion, and this is PLG. So how you grow your business is different. Specifically for pro, this is based on reputation, meaning G2, right? You're going to go to G2, you're going to look up how the users rank and G2, product hunt, all those. Reputation matters. Users, you're going to have crazy HubSpot bleeding, like orange blood bleeding people that are users that just go out and promote. And then the product itself, having a wicked awesome product is in and of itself a growth mechanism because you are leading with the product and it is what's converting. As we move to the next, we're going to talk about SMBs. The SMB market is different. And this is where I sit, right? This is where my organization sits. So it's through events, through thought leadership and content. As an example, like this, like thought leadership. Who is the person that is talking about the dark funnel, right? I think Chris Walker is a guy that comes to mind. He has mind share. He's creating a mass amount of content. He's a thought leader that everybody wants to talk to and bring to their event. And then he's going to events and talking events. And it's just this amazing traction. These are your levers of your engine, your levers of growth inside this, inside these motions that exist. And for enterprise, it's a bit different because enterprise, again, these are 18-month cycles. This is why it's really hard to just start with enterprise sales. Is you have individual people that you're making relationships with that have to trust, and your brand, because when they make decisions, they're making multi-million-dollar decisions sometimes, or even $500,000 decisions. And if the brand and the reputation of that brand matters, because they may be fired if they make a bad choice. They need to trust you. They need to know the brand is good. Then that's the other way. The levers of growth is like experience based on relationships. So here's a great example. Salesforce. They have an amazing community of admin and certifications, and they have used that as a lever of growth, where HubSpot has used their certifications as a PLG community building play. Salesforce has used their certifications as even almost like a content base for HubSpot. They have used because they have made theirs not for the end users. They have made it for people to upskill on their platform to become technical experts so they can then go to larger and larger enterprise deals. Like how they're thinking about it's different. And that makes sense because one's going after SMBs, one is going after enterprise, and now they're both going after the others. So now you can see where they're at and where they're going. I think it's really cool. Okay, so these are the different engines. And I see questions, and I will answer them in a second. I'm gonna finish going after the engines portions, and then we'll get. I'm gonna go after the service expectations. We'll get to this. So in your service expectations, I told you, and this is the last point for this, is our go-to-market motions dictate our service expectations. So on the left side is you buy the product, and you're expecting to pay $30 a month for the product. And your service is free. I mean, this is your community boards. You're sending questions in to get it. Like you're not paying. You don't ever expect. You expect that I can buy your product and I can implement it without your help or without implementation. On the right side, which changes, is you're buying. Yes, you're buying a platform, but what you're really paying for as well is like implementation is going to be covered and the product is free. So you're working on this product you have, but for for these larger things, you're buying the service of this organization because you're going to get very high touch service for you to have 24/7 report. If this piece of platform is not working, I can raise my hand and there's SLAs for how quickly you have to respond to me. And so part of the higher price is you're getting a higher degree of service as part of the product you're picking. Okay, I'm going to go to questions as we start moving to the next portion of this. So number one, where does ABM fit into this? Thinking it is two-stage SDR motion? No. So ABM is not, ABM by definition means account-based marketing. And account-based marketing means you're selling to companies. It means you have a list made out and you're specifically going after larger companies. How they buy is different. And so if you're doing that, your sales team needs to be focused on that as well. And so traditionally in this stage, it doesn't make sense to do an ABM approach. It's a lot of money. It takes a lot of money to do ABM. Like it is a very significant to do it well. You have to do it well. Just as a point. So I'd say ABM traditionally is not done at the two-stage, although it can be, right? Because I mean, these are not hard lines in between the two. Just a point. Traditionally, it's not. And so I'd spend most of the time getting really good at creating interest through prospecting and outbound. Would you say from left to right, the go-to-market motions, companies tend to choose Salesforce over HubSpot? Considering that, is HubSpot planning to move prospecting functionalities besides something else? So I'll answer this from a HubSpot perspective, right? And so this is why I am Salesforce. I come from a Microsoft Dynamics admin background and a Salesforce background where I was running revenue operations for a Salesforce stack. Salesforce has almost every one of these go-to-market motions, but most built out for enterprise and field sales and volume. And they are a multi-billion-dollar company. They are extremely big. The reason I fell in love with HubSpot when I met it, but HubSpot is now moving to field sales and enterprise motions. And so the capabilities and functions of their products have increased to such where they are now doing ABM approaches and field sales, and they have named accounts where they are selling in and trying to uproot Salesforce. But you notice they don't have certifications. They don't have that same brand recognition yet. They don't have people dedicated to say, I've made my entire life doing sales inside of HubSpot. So it's going to take time. I predict HubSpot is going to take larger and larger market share from Salesforce. And it's one of the reasons I bet on it. I mean, I have a business that's built on doing HubSpot. So yeah, I firmly believe that. Yeah. How important do you think, like Ops Hub's a great example of showing the functionality that's increasing to go up as an example, because the functionalities are what you need for enterprise. How important do you think it is, at least initially, to stay focused on a target? This is such a great question. So it's like, how important it is, do you think, to stay focused? This is what we're going to talk about next. Super darn important. That's what I'll tell you. Super darn important. And I think it's actually one of the most common mistakes people do. They do too many go-to-market motions at once because they're afraid one of them won't work. And because then you do, let me make this point. More companies die from indigestion than from actual, than focus. Like you die more from eating too much than not eating enough. So more companies die from indigestion than starvation. So just remember that as we think about go-to-markets motions. How do you know or find how your customers are buying? How you know where your customers are buying is you go to the customers, and you should have a customer list that, and the customers you like working with the most, that have been the most profitable for you, go talk to them and just diagnose, how did they buy? Take that information. We'll talk about in our data model, a closed loop data model. Take that and then help that inform how your go-to-markets happen. And it should be a closed loop system. And we'll talk more about that in the data, how this is working in the data model here in a second. Is this the path every business goes? Almost every B2B business, yes. This will be a path that is at least helpful to think through for every B2B business. I think a lot of leaders get confused and considered selling a pro product to enterprise brands and they doing enterprise sales. How can you make that distinction tactfully? Tracy, yes. And I think I mentioned that earlier is someone at Amazon is using Airtable. Someone at, oh my gosh. So I was a Salesforce user at C-Spire, which is $1 billion telecom company when I was running RevOps for. You know what I use for my meetings? HubSpot. I use HubSpot, and they were selling into, they were doing, I was doing a PLG motion in HubSpot, but I was at an enterprise company. So I think what's so helpful to have this conversation is this here, is talking to executives and being able to talk their language. Say, hey, I understand we have a product-led growth, or like a one-stage, very quick service with a low average contract value. And we have someone at Amazon, and we have someone at Costco, and we have name enterprise business. Them using our product is not indicative, like the size of their business is not indicative of our sales motion. How they buy is indicative of our sales motion. And they bought through us. They had if they were a one stage, they did it inbound on our website. We had 2 conversations and they purchased. That is not an enterprise sale. That is not an enterprise sale. We do not need an enterprise sales team. We need people out of college to answer phones, and we're teaching that we're teaching how to do. So it's just a point. Like, it's how you go to, like, how you set up sales, how you set up marketing, how you set up CS depends on how people buy. Great question. Is it community and engine also applicable for SMB or enterprise? Yes. There's a big, again, like, the question isn't, is it applicable? The question is, what is the most useful? Okay, let's do. So enterprise businesses, and we talk about that reputation and brand certifications. There's a really extremely strong Salesforce community called Trailhead, right? I was in the military before, and when I was getting out of the military, there was a program for vets called Vet Force, and you would go through the program, and it was an awesome community to be of. How I cut my teeth inside RevOps, so I learn it and get into some sandboxes and start, blowing things up. That was a community play, but the community was not based on like feel good community, or it was based on like very difficult certifications, and the entire community was helping people get certifications so they could then get a job at a company that has Salesforce. Which is different than HubSpot community, right? You're not getting a certification. What you're doing at HubSpot community and the boards, or you're answering very specific questions, and it's more like you're sharing stories. It's just a different play and has a different feeling than a community built on certifications, than one that's built on just meetups and individual, like, let's go meet up and have drinks together, versus, hey, let's help me get a certification so I can a badge of honor that I'm going to put on my resume. There's just different ways to do communities. So you're right, they're applicable, just know they're done differently. With the definition of motions be included on the presentation, what is the difference between volume and segment for CS? So segment means it's segmented by in a specific way. So segmentation may be by vertical. So example would be, I have an ABM, I have ABM, and I'm going after the real estate industry, and I'm going after the education industry. And so I would have CS teams because their use cases are different. So I need CS teams that understand how to implement my product for education-based institutions and for real estate institutions that are doing commercial real estate, because how they use it's different and they're paying a lot of money, and I make sure I'm servicing them well. That's the difference. Okay, answer lots of questions. It is 10:00 and we're not going to get through everything for this meeting. We'll just cover it next time. So let's go over the growth model, which is one question I have asked. The growth model is going to tell us we're going to talk about go-to-market motions and think about what is fit. So let's go back over this so we see it. Okay, we're talking. We just did the sale. We now done business. We've done our sales, marketing, CS, go-to-market motions, and we're about to cover the growth model. Why are we going to cover the growth model? We're going to cover the growth model because it's going to show us when we should start doing more than one go-to-market motion, or when we should start thinking about scaling and where revenue operations really fits. Here we go. This is fun. Okay, so looking at this, we have this model. So again, y-axis here is going to be time. I said y. X-axis is time. Y-axis is revenue. So the vertical one is revenue and the horizontal one is going to be time. So as we think about a product that we have, and this is irrespective, and let's say you're an enterprise business that is selling an enterprise. You have an enterprise sales motion where it's 12 months long for your contracts. They are $500,000 a piece. If you were to try to say, I want to do a PLG where people are going to come into a website, sign up, and I do a freemium, you're restarting the entire growth model. So let's talk. So obviously see this because this is important. There'll be a question here. So we talk about pre-revenue companies. Pre-revenue companies that are fitting on this are your prototype, meaning you're coming up with a product. You have an MVP, which stands for most viable product. Meaning what you're doing at this stage is you're starting to get paying customers, and they're validating that this is useful. And so there's a lot of product, high investment. Your CAC, or cost per acquisition cost, is extremely high. You are intimate with these customers and they're believing in you, and you're changing your product through just rapid loops. And we should go from 0 to $1 million in revenue. You then, after that point, we enter something called product market fit. So product market fit means I have a product and I'm making sure now that the marketplace likes it. And so this is what you're doing at this point. You're learning to price it. This is almost always like this is like founder-led sales at this point. And your first customers here, you're actually starting to go to market, right? You're doing paid. And so most of it, you don't have a brand yet. It's really difficult to do inbound marketing at this point, even though you're starting, because inbound marketing takes 6 months to start, right? So you're starting now, but almost all your acquisitions coming through on the paid side, or big events, visiting, spending lots of money to get your partners. After that point is the fun part. This is your go-to-market fit. Your go-to-market fit. This is the land of RevOps, if you would. This is where the science we've been talking about is go-to-market information. This is where you cut your teeth. This is where you make it awesome. This is where you start learning how to scale. And so during this part, you're learning to sell the product. This is, okay, what customers are best with that closed loop feeding back? What in the effort is you're trying to get from, this is usually occurring from $1 million to $10 million AR for one go-to-market motion. I'm going to repeat this because I think this is important. It is $10 million AR for one go-to-market motion. We'll do an example so that'll sit in for a second. So you have go-to-market fit. This is traditionally from 0 to $10 million AR. When you think about, I have these A's and B's, this is traditionally when like a SaaS company would be getting a Series A to get funding, or a Series B. SaaS companies need more money because they're taking more risk, right? And their profitability doesn't occur until customers have been with them for a long time, right? So they need money, Series A, Series B. And then you start to scale. And that's post $10 million. And that's what Series Bs are for. When you get this second tranche of money, the point is we have go-to-market fit. Let's scale this thing. That's the premise of it. So that this is also where RevOps thrives. You take all the learnings that you have and then you move it. But let's do an exercise to look at this as we think through it. Let's do just a point like RevOps at this point, and we'll show you data model. We're thinking about efficiency and effectiveness and how do you make each one of these go-to-market better. Let's do an example as we're thinking about this. Okay, here is the example, which hopefully I have the example. Okay, oops, I went too far. Okay, go-to-market fit example. This is a question. This is one I'd like to let's talk about this. Raise your hand, and we'll have someone answer. Let's pretend there is a company that, if you're looking at this, they're around $5 million AAR, and they're approaching what they would call go-to-market fit. They have in that go-to-market fit, what question would you ask this? So let's pretend you're just hired as a director of RevOps for this company. What is the first question you would ask based on what we've talked about today? Angela, you were on the hot seat.
I have a bunch
Yes.
of questions. So what's their market share? Do they have potential to really upsell and increase revenue from their existing clients? Are there new geographies for them to break into? So I think all those things would help you figure out where to go next.
Yes. Those are really good questions. We're starting to talk because all those questions are about, do you have market fit? And is there a potential to continue to expand into that market fit? There is one question I would add to this, and I'll keep you on here, Angela, as we think about this. Here's some additional information. And again, these are questions. I would say this is so important. Anytime you come into a company, one of the first questions you need to ask is, how are you making money?
Sure, where's your margin?
Where's your margin? Well, not just margin, because margin is not as important for like SaaS companies, as an example. It is what type, based on what we're talking about, what type of sales go-to-markets do you have today? So here's an example, more information here, and I'll ask another question. So this company, and you ask, hey, how are you going to market? What is your average deal size? Where's your revenue coming from? And they say, okay, I have 3 different strategies. Strategy 1 is I have 2 AEs that are selling $100,000 enterprise deals. Number 2 is I have an SDR and an AE that are selling 5 to 6, 20,000 deals a month. And then over the web, I have an offer of about $500 a month. What would your next question be using this methodology for go-to-market?
I might have to phone a friend.
Oh, I like it.
I think it's I would be asking that margin question, and also what's their exit strategy? Or do they
really
have
good.
an exit strategy?
So exit strategy is a good one to ask for this. And I'm going to use this go-to-market, Angela, and thank you for being put on the hot seat.
Sure.
Thank you. Everybody give Angela a high five. I love it. Thank you. Okay. So the questions we think about with segmentation and everything that Angela asked was perfect, right? Is you need to know those informations. So the next question I would go to, and using, again, I'm just using a model. So just using this model is they're thinking they have go-to-market fit because they're $5 million AAR, and they're going to start prepping to raise, 1 to 2 quarters, which is exit strategy. What's your exit strategy? And my answer to them would be I want to get a Series B. And okay, that's perfect. The question is, are we really ready for a Series B? Are we really ready to scale up and have these VC expectations of rapid scale? Or will that call implosion? Let's look further. When we dissect this further, is in reality, they have the do it for me is about $500,000 a year. Their enterprise sales that they have is about 1.5, about $1 million a year. And their SMB market, or that two-stage sales go-to-market motion, is about 3.5. And so you add those, $5 million, $500,000 from here, 1.5 from here, and then 3 million from here, 3.5 from here. You have what? $5 million AR. So I asked the question again: have any go-to-market motions hit? And do we have go-to-market fit for any of the go-to-market motions we're doing at the same time? The answer is no. No, we don't. And the answer is we're not ready for a Series B because we don't have go-to-market fit. In fact, we're still in product market fit for DI for do-it-yourself, which is that PLG motion, for enterprise and for SMB. And so this gets to the question for that thing Angel was asking is like, okay, which I think this is awesome. It's like, which one is your margin at? Which one which one is going to make you the most money long-term? Little known story, if you think about SalesLoft, you know what SalesLoft was at the beginning? SalesLoft had $6 million AAR, and they were running and it was an amazing product. They were doing scrape off LinkedIn. And I think a lot of them copied it now, like Seamless AI, but they were doing scrapes. They had $6 million business. But they were starting some some like SDR stuff and some outreach. And they were looking at their different revenue streams, and they took their like motion that was SMB for outreach, even though they had a PLG motion with $6 million AR, and they went to their SMB that was only about $1 million AR, and they built a $100 million business. But they switched because they realized one would be more profitable, one had a larger target addressable market, and one was a better need. So it's just so important when you're looking at these is where do we have go-to-market fit? Where do we want to go? And this enables us as RevOps strategists exactly to have these strategic conversations that then we can start building to our CRMs to tell the story and narratives that we can scale the right product at the right time and be able to give answer the questions we need to answer. Okay. They have not achieved go-to-market fit. I'm gonna sit here for a second. So just this, they have not achieved go-to-market fit. They should sit on their not sit on their laurels, but they should sit down for a second and start thinking about scale and the specific go-to-markets based on where they have the best margin, where they have the most momentum, and perhaps one of these should die because you want to scale on you aren't scaling until you have go-to-market fit. You don't scale a sales motion until you have go-to-market fit. So even if they were to get money, another issue is, even if they were to get money and we had SMB fit, don't try to scale the do-it-yourself just because it's PLG and PLG is a FAV. You still have to go through. You cannot skip MVP, product market fit, or go-to-market fit. You can't skip it. Okay, answer questions. How does your customer prefer to buy? Yes, that's a really good question. And that would help answer this like SMB, enterprise, do it yourself. And so this was fundamentally what we're pretending like this was already answered. That's a really good question to ask. Meg, do these metrics apply equally to service, or the figures approach different, still B2B? Yes, I'd say, so Mang's answer to this is I think service-based firms tend to have a higher contract value. So using go-to-market motion that applies is more towards enterprise. So Meg, I'll answer this as this is the business that RevPartners does, right? We have contracts from $60,000 upwards of $150,000. We have a one-stage go-to-market motion, and we are only selling to SMBs / SMBs. So when you're looking at these, your average contract value, and that goes to this mid-market, but so there's a point. Your contract values on service firms tend to be a little larger, but still be contract because they're not buying a product, you're buying some kind of service. Usually it's an outsourced portion, and so they tend to be a little larger and still have they don't have an enterprise go-to-market motion. So like one of the example of a search firm that does have an enterprise go-to-market sales motion is a BCG, Boston Consulting Groups, or McKinsey, right? They're having these large multi-year implementations that are millions of dollars as large contracts. Are you using HubSpot? I don't know if that's to me. If it's to me, I'm gonna say yes, I am using HubSpot. Is for too many things, maybe. Good morning, I raised my hand incorrectly. Roger that. Okay, so let's go. The data model. I'm going to stop at, and we will continue the data model. The next class, we're going to finish it, but I'm going to start here, but I will not get through all of it. And we will finish the next class. We'll finish the data model. This data model, but let's see where we're at. Again, I like this picture because it helps us think about where we're going at. So we have now done business model, our sales, marketing, and CS go-to-market motions. We talked about the growth model, right? So all these need to fit together, and you're starting to see how they're working together. The next is data model. How am I, based on my sales go-to-market motion and my business model and where I'm at in the growth model, how am I starting to think about what I'm doing? So this is the science. This is if you stop, if you're like zoned out, not listening, this is where you want to listen to this data model. You could not listen to everything else. Just do this data model, and it may be the most important thing we're talking about this entire time. So you've all seen this. Truth. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it's just the truth. We've seen this before. This is the funnel that we've all hate and we all despise it, and we talk about how it's old, but it's how we all actually do work most of the time. It is prospects, leads, MQLs, SQLs, and it stops. And if you look at HubSpot instances today, they're going to have this: leads, MQLs, SQLs, opportunities, and customers. But then we think as a methodology, and this is when sometimes methodologies, I love HubSpot, by the way. Love it, love it, love it. I just want to say this is a methodology, but like putting it into a CRM takes a little bit more science. So we're going to talk about, we're going to take this flywheel, and how do you get the flywheel? How do you actually turn this little circle into a data model and a CRM? So you've had people start thinking about this way, like you push it over and you have the bow tie funnel, right? And this usually is at the bottom, you're now doing retention, upsell, cross-sell, expansion. But like, how do you put this inside of a CRM? Like, how do you start thinking about these metrics in a way that is helpful, in a way that we can drive business? We can see if our go-to-market motion is working or not working, how to make slight adjustments and do small adjustments for large outsized returns. Before I get into this, let's talk about some characteristics of this model that we want to create. Number one, full funnel. We talk about it. We use the word full funnel, but I don't like being full, so I think it's funny we use it. I like being just right, satisfied funnel maybe. Anyway, we have the full funnel. Impact is the full funnel is the word impact matters. I'm taking this from Winning by Design. I love this methodology and how they're talking about it. It's saying impact. So we're moving away from pain. It's talking about what impact has been achieved, and impact needs to be achieved at every point of the bow tie funnel. It is a funnel. We have a funnel. We do not have a flywheel. We have a funnel because you can't put a flywheel in a data model. That's why you have a funnel. But full funnel. Once you have this funnel, you can start to see, and just as a point is, more time is spent on the customer side of this funnel than as a prospect. Thus, more time is spent in the CS funnel than the sales funnel. So just remember that as we think about it. We'll show that in some pictures. We need customer-centric. Words matter. So we have terminology that is very seller-centric. You'll see this in most places. Closed won, proposal sent, signed contract, negotiate, etc. Like very seller-centric wordings that we need to, in my opinion, it's time to say goodbye. And then this full funnel needs to be closed looped. It is, Jonathan, I will expand on the impact and the full funnel. It'll see it visually too. Closed loop. This has to be closed looped. So however we do our data model, we need to be able to show, which we'll get into the next lessons about math. How does the math work, and where are we prioritizing our time as RevOps professionals? But it's the compound growth. Reoccurring impact is where awesome happens. Reoccurring impact is where profit occurs. Reoccurring impact is our goal. We want people to love us a long time. Most people are not our family. We want them to feel like they are. And then it informs over time. So we talk about how do we know what go-to-market motion is working? The feedback from our customers that we have reoccurring impact with, we take and we inform what's working on the other side. So that is a closed loop funnel. Okay, I'm going to show a picture and I'm going to answer your question. Answer these questions I see here in a second. So this is a scientific model. So if you're looking at it, this is the full model. And we're going to build metrics that we can look at, that we can judge and think through. So from left to right, you've seen these before, but let's put them in here. You have awareness. From awareness, then you then start educating. From education, then the customer's going through a selection process. From selection, we're onboarding, getting live, whatever that may be for yours. We then are achieving impact, meaning, hey, I liked working with you, that the end result has been achieved. And a reoccurring impact is where retention or upsell or cross sales, maybe I'm purchasing again, I'm renewing my contract, whatever, I'm buying a different product, whatever it may be. People think I like this enough where I want more impact. I want more awesome of you. So when we think about this from journey, is traditionally, this is like linear. This is a linear path where I'm like going up and down through this path. And we all know that ain't the truth. So when we see it, yes, this was my hand drawing, by the way. I can't draw, but this was me trying to solve circles. But this is what it looks like, right? On the left side, we're like marketing, we're awareness, education, awareness, education, awareness, education, go through, we'll go to selection to education, we're going back and forth. And then we go straight through, we get onboarded, we achieve impact, and then we upsell, renew. That ain't true either. Guys, the same thing that's happening on the left side of this funnel is happening on the right side of this funnel. It looks a lot more like this, right? It is squiggly line on the left side, and it is a lot of squiggly lines on the right side, or you get reoccurring impact. Maybe, I don't know if it's a good analogy, but think about marriage, right? Is there's a lot of going back and forth. You happy, sad, and you're progressively getting reoccurring impacts where there's more and more love is the end result where you want to be. So we want to create happy marriages. That's what we're trying to do with our scientific approach. And so this is what's happening. And how do we have data models allowing us to achieve impact, have cross-sell, and just continuously go through this over and over again? And that's where we need to focus when we have these full. So if you remember the business model, and like most people are moving away from perpetual ownership or ownership models into subscription, into consumption. Thus, we must focus here. And there is a lack of understanding at this part, and even at the HubSpot CRM level, and we'll get to that in a second. Okay, it is 10:23. I'm going to stop. I'm going to answer questions, and we are going to go back. I think it's a good stopping point for a break. We'll come back, and we're going to start to go over all the metrics as we build out this data model, and then we'll finish with class 4 because class 4 is a little shorter. Okay, so I'm going to go through questions. If you have more questions, let me know. I'll go through this. I'm going to go through Alicia. What is the most critical metric to choose the go-to-market motion? IG, I have better conversion rates, better margin enterprise, but have larger TAM and SMB. Which one is more important? That is a hard question. And so it's going to all be, this is where founders, entrepreneurs, you have to make a bet, but it has to be an informed bet. And there are two-way decisions, and there are two-door decisions and one-door decisions. What do I mean? A one-door decision is if I walk through this door, I can never go back through it. It is done. It closes. I'm locked in. Two-door decisions mean I can make the decision, and if I don't like it and I'm collecting information, I can walk back out. Almost every go-to-market decision is a two-door decision. So as you're seeing companies that are scaling, a lot of times they'll start, they'll do different products. And that's because you have these two-door decisions. But at the end of the day, you have to choose which one am I investing in. And the one you're going to invest in, you have to choose what is your exit strategy. Do you want to have $100 million company with a large TAM and potentially fail during a scaling process and never reach that? There's more risk there. I'm I might grow and buy a yacht after it, right? Right? There's more risk, higher reward. The other one is, hey, I have an enterprise motion that I'm not, my market's much smaller, but I can guarantee profit and I can have a really good living. But I'm never going to be considered wealthy. I'm not going to have this large exit that Forbes writes about. And so you have like that, you're looking at these metrics and you have to decide your end state, which only you can choose, that will also impact where you want to end, impacts what risk you're willing to go. And so that's how I think through those questions. So you have to put them all together and then think through it. Aurora is when working on sales go-to-market motions and marketing go-to-market motions, do you find there's a commonality to how marketing individuals support one salesperson or vice versa? Does that change when delivery teams become in charge of upselling existing deals? I would ask some clarifying questions on this, but I will say this, there is a commonality specifically with two-stage where you have an SDR, which sometimes called BDR, MDR, and we get all those terms mixed up. Let's just say we have a person that's prospecting or marketing owns, or someone that's doing a inside sales because it's inbound and they're fielding the call, and that lives with the marketing team and then passing it over to sales. There's commonality. Is that marketing or is that sales? Where there's conversation. So marketing skills look a whole lot like sales skills. And then on the right side, as you go to upsells and cross sells, and this is where we've marketing actually fits across this whole funnel, but sales ends. And where I like to think about sales ending, which we'll get more later in today's discussion about what measurements and conversion ratios you're looking at. Sales ends traditionally is like clawbacks after a 6-month term or 1-year term or post live, right? Sales relationships end and the CS team takes over. Then the CS team, the customer service team, is working with the marketing team. And so marketing sits as a support function. That's where we talk about demand gen versus lead gen. So there is a very small lead gen portion of marketing with 2 stages that they need to understand, but there's also this demand gen that's being done all at the same time. I hope that gives you some insight. If you ask another follow-up question, feel free. Hopefully that was helpful. Okay, we have 3 minutes. Can you elaborate a bit more on impact in the full funnel? Not sure I totally understand what you mean by this. This is impact in full funnel. Is when somebody commits, which I'm going to say it this way because I think sometimes I forget what I have. Okay, is when you think about this funnel, right? They're very specific. I use verbs. I like verbs here. This is identified, to interested, to engaged, to committed. I don't like close one because we're going to change customer centric to committed, right? So someone's committed, saying, I believe that the impact you said you can deliver, I'm committed to attempting to work with you to create the impact in my life. So they then onboard and they're ready, they're live. And now, just because they're onboarded, have they achieved the impact? Are they achieving the impact that you said? And so, there needs some trigger, like a reoccurring impact. If you have a 6-month contract, did they renew? Yes or no? If they renewed, they have decided to renew with you, and now they are moving to recurring impact, which is where you want to go. So that's how this funnel works. And we're going to talk about during our volume metric here when we come back from break on how we're thinking through that, and how we're measuring that and putting that in, starting to think about scientifically that where we can start to effectuate. This is RevOps. You're about to see it here in a second. Okay, David, the last question. What are your thoughts between go-to-market ops and RevOps? This is funny. Is there a difference for you? Is it the same thing? Which do you think represents better your work? So there's a community called Modern Sales Pros. Right now, there is a question, and maybe it's the same person. I don't know if maybe you saw it. It is. I am working here. Should I be called go-to-market operations or revenue operations? And if you're here in class 1, then you may already know my stance in this, which is I don't care that much. I think either one of them is helpful. RevOps is an attempt to talk about we are in charge of all revenue and the full funnel, and it's a professional that's thinking about the revenue and the science of it. Go-to-market operations is in many ways the same thing, but the difference, I would say the biggest difference is a go-to-market operations individual. If you talk about they're doing motions, they're talking about tactics. They're not actually configuring and managing tool sets usually. So for the most part, I would recommend if you're managing tool sets and you have a database and you're thinking about creating enterprise relational, ERDs, entity relational diagrams and your databases, and you're putting everything together, then your revenue operations. If you're not, and you're just theoretically talking about tactics and you're making plans and you're giving other people to implement, that's going to market operations. Is there any future for data analysts in HubSpot? Yes. Yes. You're about to see, we're about to create a bunch of data here. In fact, Ops Hub, if you haven't got an Ops Hub, go get enterprise, get data sets, and that is literally data analyst work. What we also, I would use something like Synchrony on the background. Yeah, you need help. Data analyst can be wicked awesome inside HubSpot. Okay, that's 10:30, guys. Let's take a 30-minute break. Feel free to keep asking questions here. Jan, I'll pass it over to you to tell us how to do this break.